to just 2 minutes. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Capability Forum. The topic is um, um, managers are burnt out too, nobody talks about it. So before we begin, here's a quick introduction to our distinguished panelists and moderator. The first panelist for today's session is Ms. Ishita Datta, Head of HR Aveta, a seasoned HR leader with extensive experience in talent strategy, people development, and organizational effectiveness. Ishita brings valuable insights on building resilient workplaces and enabling leaders to thrive in high growth environments. Welcome, Ishita.
Thank you so much, Veerbhadra. Just a correction, it's Ishita Panda.
Ishita Bhatt, yes, sorry. Our next panelist is Ms. Archana, Head of HR at Electrobit, an accomplished HR professional with deep expertise in leadership development, employee engagement, and culture building. Archana is passionate about creating people-centric organizations that balance performance with well-being. Welcome, Ms. Archana.
Thank you, Veerbhadra. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, our next panelist is Ms. Varnika Raval, HR business partner at Movin Sync. Working closely with business leaders and teams, Varnika brings practical perspectives on workplace dynamics, leadership challenges, employee experience, and supporting managers in today's evolving workplace. So, welcome, Varnika.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next panelist is Ms. Devsha Patnaik, Senior HRBP, Honeywell Aerospace. With strong experience in business partnering and talent management, Devsha works at the intersection of people and business strategy, helping leaders navigate change while driving organizational performance. So, welcome, Devsha.
Thank you so much and excited to meet you, everyone.
Yeah. And our final panelist is Mr. Sunil Sahu, Senior Consultant Learning and Development at Trimont, a passionate L&D professional focused on capability building, leadership development, and performance transformation. Sunil brings a learning lens to the discussion on how organizations can better equip managers for success. Welcome, Sunil.
Thank you so much, Veer.
And finally, our moderator for today's session, Ms. Bhavna Preetham, Senior Product Manager at Lowe's India. Leading cross-functional teams and business initiatives, Bhavna brings a unique business and leadership perspective. Her experience navigating complex stakeholder environments positions her perfectly to facilitate a meaningful and engaging conversation. So together we will explore managers are burnt out too. Nobody talks about it. So looking forward to a thought-provoking discussion and learning from each other's experience. So thank you all for being part of the Capability Forum. And I hand it over to Ms. Bhavna to take the discussion forward.
Hey, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I'm really excited to meet everyone here today. Before we start, I must admit that when I looked at the panel lined up, I noticed something immediately. Everyone is an HR leader, HR business partner, leadership development expert, and there is me, product manager. But I think that's exactly why this topic matters, because manager burnout isn't limited to any one function. It's a business problem, leadership problem, and most importantly, I would say a human problem. So today we are exploring a question that's surprisingly under discussed. What's who's talking I mean Who's taking care of the people, taking care of everyone else? So on that note, let's start with a quick round of discussion, and I would like to invite each of our panelists to complete one sentence here. Managers today are exhausted because, and maybe we can start with Ishita. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear this sentence?
Bhavna, I was going through it, and it's such a relevant topic and very less spoken about, right? I believe managers today, all of the managers, and I was going through some data also. So 60 to 78% of our managers are burdened, are overstressed, are burnt out. And they're all exhausted today due to 100 reasons. And most of it is because every organizational priority, it eventually lands on the manager's desk. Whatever is happening, they're supposed to bring a solution to it. They're expected to be the not only the executioner experts, but also the leaders, the coaches, the mentors, the therapists, and everything that you want them to be doing, they're doing everything. So it's not just that we are adding more to their plate, it is also because we're not taking away from their plate what we should, right? So it's like adding more and more and not taking away anything. So that keeps on building and building, and that results in having the burnout eventually. Right? I would say that. And like you said, it is not an individual problem anymore. It is not a function problem anymore. At the end, it looks like it is an organizational design problem. It eventually becomes a culture problem, because if a manager is stressed out, it also reflects on their team members. It also reflects on how he leads the team and how he engages with the team, and eventually that comes out in terms of performance, in terms of productivity, in terms of attrition. So that's what it is.
So I could go next. What I see is that, gone all those days, only manager plays one role. It's like Ishita said that, they're not only the delivery leaders. Today, we expect them that, they could be a translators where they bring the strategy from the global and then translates that, and then that becomes a goals for the employees, right? They're also capability building people. They're also change management. So when these roles become so high expectation and the faster it goes, but the kind of, and then they are accountable, but we don't give them enough of authority for them to deliver and enough of support that if we don't give it to them, I see that definitely it leads to burnout.
Agreed, agreed. I can add to that key, because I believe that I'm very young. But I have seen people in my, in my family also in belonging to a corporate world. So I believe 10 years ago, a manager's primary responsibility was to just manage work. But today they're expected to manage work, people, emotions, conflict, engagements, stakeholder expectations, retentions, and simultaneously they have to manage out the business expectations and outcomes as well. So the challenge is not that managers are working harder. So the challenge is that they're carrying more responsibilities while operating in an environment of constant change. So I feel this is one of the most primary reasons that they're so exhausted and they are at a stage of burnout right now.
True, Anika, right point. And if I have to add on with COVID happening and the way AI has come up, if you look at the graph of things that are changing, it's like exponentially high. So there's a lot of transitions that is happening, and the expectations have gone up. Like previously, we had a very comfortable growth. Now everyone wants to meet their top line and ensure that the margins are being met. And with that, the managers have to wear the hat of executioner, also the visionist, also people manager. And they're just juggling multiple roles. And I think it's juggling between these roles is what creating a lot of burnout.
Exactly. So I have something different perspective on this. Managers are exhausted today. So what can be a best reason? According to my research and expertise with different organizations, what I feel that is when right now a manager, nobody ever asks that how they are doing. They are just running behind how their team will be happy, how the boss will be happy, how the work will be delivered. That's it. Nobody ever asks them while they are going, are you okay? Are you okay to take this task? Are you okay to take this accountability? No. We think that managers are Superman. They can take everything. So that can be a reason which leads to a silence exhaustion. At present, they are taking it, but later on, when it is getting hectic for them, that can be the exhausting thing.
Well said, everyone. And I think we have set the stage quite well. We have touched upon different facets of a burned out manager. How does that look like? We talked about AI, pandemic, their responsibility, one man army, in short. So let's make this a little more real. So now imagine there is a manager who is managing a mid sized team where a couple of team members need support, stakeholder want faster outputs, and a new initiatives from his or her boss has just landed up. So my question would be, at what point does this accountability, become overload to the manager?
I can start. So basically, for me, accountability is owning the outcomes. So overload usually begins when managers are expected to solve problems that should be, addressed at a systematic level. But for example, if a team is, understaffed for 6 months and the manager is continuously working late nights to maintain the service level, that is not accountability anymore. For that, that would be organizational dependency on individual sacrifice. So a simple way for me to, put a differentiation between accountability and overload is to ask if this manager takes a weekly off, does the system continue to function? Or everything would just lapse with, not one person being there. So if the answer is no, we do not have a managerial problem, we have a process problem. So that would, be my understanding of how accountability end and the overload begins.
Right, Bernika. So, and to build upon what you just said, so Devsha, what do you think? Which expectations are reasonable and which are unrealistic? As she mentioned about
But now,
organizations. Yeah.
so most of the organizations are operating in a matrix organization, right? So there are people managers as well, and there are technical leaders as well. And at times between them, the roles overlap, and it's not a proper definition. So ultimately, what happens is we see that okay, people managers are there, they're responsible to drive milestones, they're responsible for taking care of team, they're also responsible to keep them happy. In the age of AI, people always question, am I losing my job? And they're all depressed. So you also have to take care of their well-being as well. Along with that, you are managing different generation. You have Generation X, millennials, you have Gen Z. So that's where the thing is. If the role and responsibility of a manager is properly defined, what roles should a technical leader should do, what role a people manager needs to do, their overlap, their influence, I think life will be a lot easier. So I agree to the point of Varnika that it's a process issue. Rather, I would put it in a frame saying that it's a system issue. If the definitions of each and every roles in the system, if they are not defined, there will be overlap, there will be confusion, and ultimately it might lead to a lot of while solving it out, ultimately it becomes the people manager's responsibility and they burn it out.
I just want to add to what Deepsha said. What happens as part of this metrics organization is that the rules get diluted. And then the second part is also the responsibilities become blur as part of this. And then, like she said, there is an overlap. Even the decision making becomes, so slower as part of this. There's hardly any decisions that take it. And then we get stuck and then we get into the similar loop. And then that leads us to frustration. And then burnout is going to end up. And then do we have any common shared goals? The answer is, yes and no. But it's so difficult to have a common shared goals when we have in this metrics organization also we see that. So that could also lead to, overload and kind of lacking the clarity. Clarity is something that I see that it is so much missing today. And then we truly need to do many ways to see that how we can get the clarity for, managers.
Achha, you spoke about clarity, and it looks like 4 out of 10 managers do not have clarity about their goals that they're supposed to do. And, the always available thing that we have built for ourselves, especially the South Asian countries, because we have to be available in during the IST hours and even post that to support North America and Europe and other time zones. So this always available culture has led to about some, 88% of our managers saying that we are actually working more than 14, 16 hours in a day because we have to because we have to support two separate time zones, right? And this is adding to their burnout, and nobody actually asks them like, are you okay? They're just supposed to be the shock absorbers of everything. Anything happens, they are there. We just take them for granted, and the organization takes them for granted. And it has been going on for so many decades now, that somebody wanting to break out of this schedule is called somebody who is not available, or is not working hard enough. That's the kind of taboo that we are fighting today. The good part is Gen Z has come in, and I see a lot of change in the way they approach business and they approach their work. For them, work life balance is more important these days. We talk to them and we find out they're like, keep the job, I'll find another one, but this is not for me, I'm not in for this. So they are probably the ones who are helping us millennials fight this as HRs and as business partners who suppose the business outcomes with trying to balance the people aspect here. We also keep fighting. We also keep saying that no, enough of shifts. Try to make things at one time. But eventually, we are also doing that. We are also not leading by example. We are also engaging in time zones, in 2 or 3 different time zones. So I think that there has to be a time where we have to step up. We have to put some boundaries like other regions too, and say, okay, this is where it is. Let's stop it here and let's have some time to ourselves and let's give out some time to the managers. So I think that's one step towards it.
Yep. So agreed upon all of the points what have been said. So this is exactly the challenges what managers are facing. But why the challenge occurs and why the challenge happens and what can a manager do best to avoid out of that? See, the simplest thing is accountability in a crowd of a manager. If I announce about any of the task or accountability, 90% of the manager will lead in because they wanted to take the accountability to get well known within the organization. But before taking the accountability, a manager should understand that accountability without psychological safety leads to the pressure. And with that pressure, that manager will burn out definitely. They have to understand what that psychological safety means. Psychological safety in corporate, it's simple, means that clear goals, clear vision, clear understanding about the task, nothing should be in the silos. It should be the transparent thing. This psychological safety every manager should have to understand about and add it to that. That will definitely help them.
Yeah, Sunil, one more point which comes across to me, psychological safety is fail fast and learn, right? So how much are we encouraging our employees to fail fast? And then how much are we allowing them to take risk? Are we saying that, the getting the past baggage and then not allowing them to perform? I see that, we talk about psychological safety, but we really need to question and see ourselves that how much are we giving in this organization. For me, somehow I reflect, very recently with, being the coach, the kind of space what a coach gives is the psychological safety is it's my reflection that, perspective, that how much in the organizations, that kind of a safe space that we are giving, because we end up in bias judged because my employee is going to be rated, performance evaluated. So that kind of safety net is something that, we have not well established in most of the corporates.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah, I
very
have
agree
a
upon that.
counterpoint over here. We are talking about psychological safety, but we are in a generation right now where we are running so fast. So, if I take care of my psychological safety, but don't harp upon the opportunities that are coming up, am I going to stay relevant, right? So, there's always a question of staying relevant and then psychological safety. So, we'll always choose the other one, and then that leads to burnout, and somehow internally we are trying to balance it out. And the only solution where I see, of course, a lot of organizations are pushing for the EAP programs that we have, like one-to-one help, Amaha, all of those programs that are there. But that for that also managers need to have time to discuss and understand where they need to stop, how fast they need to grow. So now the question is when they should stop and when they should slow down, and is the slowdown acceptable right now or not?
Right. I would just one line I would like to add, that slowdown part. That's actually true because many of us or many managers believe that asking for help will actually make them look very weak or incapable, or they're not able to properly manage the team. So as a result, they just stay silent and take on more work, and they continue pushing themselves until the burnout sets in. So that's true. Yes, that's a
Adding to this, like you said, psychological safety is one thing that pushes these managers to take on more and more, and they're not able to say no to things, right? That's one of the culture that we have set for ourselves, that we cannot say no. We need to learn to say no. We need to start saying no at some point of time, or maybe prioritize things here. Everything that comes to a manager becomes a priority, becomes urgent. And that is one. And second is we elevate people. We promote people, we give them a next level, saying, okay, now you're promoted, now you have people to lead. But are we giving them the support that they need? Are we giving them the proper training that they need to have, right? Leadership and management are two different things. And now in the last 10 years, we have spoken so much about leadership, so much about management, the difference between them. I think the pressure that every manager nowadays wants to become a leader and not just a manager, that has led a lot of pressure, that has added to the pressure. Now a manager wants to be the best leader. He wants his employees to talk good about him. He wants his team members to say, to feel good about themselves. If there is some extra load, he doesn't want to get delegated, because he wants to be good. He doesn't want his employer, his team members to burn out, right? So everything keeps adding up onto his pressure, without the support that he needs, without the extra capacity that he needs to have that, and everything is just adding up to the burnout eventually.
So
Yeah.
I
Ishita,
think the
Agree.
way they are spending their times in meetings, 70%, 60% of their day goes into just meetings and meetings, and it has become a calendar management more than, a people management kind of a scenario for the managers.
So I think those were really, really interesting perspective, quite a good engagement. And seems we all agree that it doesn't happen in one day, right? And we also talked about importance of setting boundaries, accountability. So now that we have spoken a lot about the system issue, role and expectation clarity, working across time zones, working with different generations. So now let's move to something that's often much harder to see because burnout is not always visible. And I believe many people in this room have either worked as a manager or worked for a manager who appeared successful, composed, and well controlled from outside, right? But leadership often comes with pressure, and I think most of you covered this as well. Leadership often comes with a pressure that are not visible to the rest of the organization, right? So, as we explore the conversation nobody had before, I would like to ask our panelists what has really changed in terms of hybrid work. And I remember Devsha talking about 10 years before this situation were like this. So, I would like to hear how things have changed over time, and that is making the manager role difficult or more challenging today.
Rather, I would like to start with a case and I think it's very prominent in all the organizations. We all complain about Gen Zs now focused on work-life balance. But what if you are coming to office and the Gen Zs don't show their face in the organization? So, and we expect managers to be empathetic, give work-life balance, but somewhere you have to drive the accountability and ensure that your targets, your goals are getting achieved. So when we are talking about hybrid work arrangement, I think somewhere each and every generation needs to understand that there's a certain accountability and responsibility involved with it, which I see a huge gap because I, for example, if I'm working virtually, it is my responsibility that I give that safety net to my manager that so that they know that okay, I'm working, I'm there, I'm available, and if there is any problem, they can reach out to me and I'll help them. But if that safety net is not given to the manager, even though the manager might be extremely humble, down to earth, but ends up micromanaging a lot. And I think after hybrid mode that we have entered into it, even though managers don't want to micromanage, but if they don't know the whereabouts of the people that they are dealing with, they have to micromanage. And I think with AI and all coming in, the spans we need to look at the spans that each managers have now from leading to 7 people to 10 people. I think people have started leading almost 20 odd to 30 odd people, and all of them, and there's no layer in between, and that's happening in almost most of the organization. The in between layers are going out and spans are increasing, and responsibility is on the manager to start micromanaging, otherwise they will not be able to extract work.
I can add to what Debsha said. One is the speed. I can give you a classic example of software development life cycle. Earlier, customers were asking, 4 years, if we have the entire development cycle done, it is good enough. But today, they expect in 18 months. So which means the speed at which we function is extremely, 3x, 3x times it has gone, and we only expect outcomes in 10x times, 10x fast. So that speed is there in the technology, at which the speed of the technology with AI coming in, the expectations are going so much, but we are not able to match as humans, right? So earlier it is like, it was like a precision machines. So we were matching to the machines, but today they're asking that, the energy to match to the speed at which the change is happening. When it comes to the technology today, no more gone all those people today. It's only skills. So we rate people based on skills. Earlier, the technology skills used to take 3 to 4 years, in fact, to bring the new skills. But today, if you look at it, what I was, earlier, what got me here won't get me where I want to be. So it's so important that the skills, the customer demands, and the expectation which is going, the competition, so it is extremely higher, and then that definitely leads to burnout.
Right, correct. So I would also like to just add that, at the same time, employee expectations have also changed significantly. People want that flexibility, people want that regular feedback, that growth opportunities, that meanwhile, and apart from that, they also want the empathy from their managers in case their camera is not working or anything, or they're not showing up. So they want everything out of that one person. And on the other side, organizations want faster results. They want higher productivity, they want stronger business outcomes, so managers are just standing right in the middle trying to just balance both. And sometimes I just feel that managers today spend more time managing expectations than managing actual work. So it's more about, this person is having this issue and then the organizations want this outcome. So being a bridge is something that is being very, very difficult and something which is, pushing them more towards the burnout is what I feel about the hybrid situation. Because, a few years ago, managers just could walk around the office, the pre-COVID time, and have the quick conversations and just get a sense of how the team was doing. Today, a lot of things happen through the screen. The challenge is that because someone is online doesn't mean that they're engaged. Now, people have found like creative ways to be online and to engage their productivity. So that is what I feel that hybrid work has changed leadership more than it has changed the work itself. So that is something which I come I have that perspective from.
Right. So this is the one interesting point actually within the hybrid work setting. So in hybrid work setting, and what is the difference between office and hybrid work setting? In hybrid, why the managers are getting burnout easily, as far as my understanding, because the team members will be available but they are not accessible when there is the most requirement of a time bound deliverable. Let's say we have to deliver something within 4, people are available but they're not accessible, they're not working, and which leads the pressure from the manager. And when it works and it going for very long day or long time and not meeting the targets or deadlines, it is the reason of burnout, because the team members are not happy because the manager is forcing, and the boss is not happy because the manager is not delivering the task. This is the dark side of hybrid work model. But yes, hybrid work model have flexibility for the organization, for the individual, for the employees, everyone.
So
No,
I
I
hear
think
you. Yeah, please.
just last one point. We all said how hybrid is not working out, but one thing that has added up from hybrid workforce perspective is also that managers have started managing spans across locations. So that's one advantage that we have from a hybrid standpoint. So in that way, people actually manager can spend good amount of time with people across sites, and that way knowledge transfers are happening properly. So since all of us were telling how it's not beneficial for us, I thought I'll add something that it has been adding up for us.
Thank
Diksha,
you
my point of view actually aligns with you, and that's why I was listening to everybody and waiting to kind of counter, not exactly counter. See, my heart goes out for people who are in Bangalore and Noida and the NCR region. We know how pathetic the traffic situation is. I spend 1.5 hour reaching office and then another half hour, 1.5 hour coming back home. I'm a manager too, and my team members also go through the same thing. So while I believe hybrid is positive because it takes away a lot of pressure away from you in terms of not having to face the traffic, the pollution, but at the same time, and it has solved the location flexibility, like you said, right? But it has increased the emotional labor for the managers. It didn't reduce the manager responsibility, it just redistributed the work into invisible work. Now there is a lot of time the managers have to spend administering things instead of getting more productive with the team members. Now here, like people were saying, they have to see, they have to be empathetic if the camera is not working. Vanika was talking about that, right? Camera is not working, mic is not working, somebody has to pick up the kids from school and this and that. So the manager has to be empathetic towards everything, while at the same time having to juggle to make sure that the productivity is met. So what it does at the end of the day, if the team is supposed to do 100% but ends up doing 70, he takes up the test 30% on his plate and delivers without saying a single word to the team members, because he wants to be empathetic, he wants to be a leader and not a manager. So everything at the end of the day, while hybrid is positive and I'm in for it, but for the managers, it's little easier when they see people on the floor, because they can get things done faster. The communication is faster. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's quite interesting to hear, both side of the discussion. I think we all agree that, manager burnout is rarely caused by a single factor, right? It's often the result of multiple pressures coming together, right? And one thing I've noticed in product in technology space is that most problems are not caused by a bad intention, I would say. They are caused by maybe competing priorities, and I think the next scenario captures exactly that. So now imagine a manager who is known for being super supportive, approachable, always available for the team, irrespective the hybrid culture. So employees like to work with that person. But over time, what happens? Targets start slipping off. Difficult conversations are avoided. Accountability weakens, and the team dependency increases. So eventually, what happens? Leadership feedback is like, you're a great manager, but business performance is suffering. So that particular manager feels trapped, right? So if I and one may think like, if I push harder, then I'll burn out my team. If I focus on well-being, I get questioned on performance. So Sunil, my question for you too is, as you hear these situations, what stands out to you the most?
Yeah, sure. So, coming just tweaking the question very straight. So, it is the difference between the empathy and accountability, right? So, when it's very simple, and when there is empathy and no accountability, it hurt the performance level. And when there is accountability and not empathy, it will hurt your personality, that you as a person people will not accept. So for this kind of situation, I would rather not blame but focus upon the organizational or systematical things within the organization, what they have to set up, what organizations do, right? 90 not I cannot say 90%. Most of the organization, they do is they do promote their best performer as a manager. But to be a manager, the best performance is not only the thing. They have to understand the people management also. If a person is not a best performer, not the top performer, it may be third or fourth. But that person knows the people management skill set. That person knows that how to drive the accountability alongside of empathy. Then that person can be a good people manager. So in this case, organization have to set up their managers learning journey. In organization, what we focus, as far as my experience from learning and development side, what we focus is, as a global employee standpoint, we are making up a learning journey for them. But for a manager's life cycle, when a manager is getting promoted, what is the learning journey for the manager? We are not focusing upon that. We are investing upon the employee engagement, but we are not investing upon the manager engagement. Because I have never heard that there is a manager engagement is happening and managers are taking out some time to get themselves involved into it, and there is a cohort peer group for managers to discuss and understand that, okay, what is the challenge for this manager, what is the challenge for that manager. There's nothing happening. It's very rare into the corporate society right now. So my point of view will be, if we as an organization start investing upon our manager, start looking up to our manager is like the individual contributors, because within driving the team performance, they are also individual contributors, right? They have their own well-being as an employee. So organizations have to start focusing upon that side to make them learn that how they drive the empathy and accountability in a same line to deliver the performance.
One thing I would like to yes and no to what Sunil shared is like because one thing my experience in last 2 decades of HR and the organization is that people manager is the only role from everywhere they come in and get fixed. I could be an individual contributor, I may be a product owner, product manager, scrum master. Every other person, the sweet spot for them is like, if I want to grow, it's a myth or a mindset. I truly do not know. They become, people managers. So that's one I, appreciate, align with what Sunil said is that, that is when mostly what happens is that not giving the right platform of journey to them, they are bound to get burnt out. My own example, I can share it. In my previous organization, I was an individual contributor. So only in Electrobit, I took it up as a, manager role or a leader role. That's how it evolved. But when I looked at it, I thought it's just one more role that I can perform. But until I'm put into it, it takes a toll. I took 1 year, 4 months to understand actually what the role is, what my expectations are, what a stakeholder's expectation is. It was not easy, and I was not trained. I'm a classic example that I can say that I was not trained as a head HR. What are you expected to do? I'm also transitioned from an individual contributor to a, people responsibilities. So that's a classic example where I felt that, there was no hand holding, no transition, but I'm able, I need to deliver. I was burnt out when I started for 1 year, 4 months. But after that, I figured out my own ways. Resilience is my biggest strength, I would say. That's how I survived, and I'm here. But one thing to that, what we did in Electrobit is that, we created a journey for managers called Ignite Leadership, where we brought all of them together. We designed a curriculum for them. We also brought managers to develop their individual development plan, created called Learning Adda, where they can truly have a conversation learn from each managers. So that really enabled people to learn from each other, and then they became very good bonding, and they created a very good cohort and community today. But is that enough? Definitely it's not enough, and we need to continuously invest. Last 2 years we've been investing to see that what beautifully we can bring these managers together. What is the current state and what is the desired state we want to really bring them. But what happens is that how much me as a manager is really taking this as a privilege and then make that happen so that I don't get burnout is a choice of an individual at the end of the day. How passionate. I somehow feel that passion is something which can only drive to see I can bring the balance, I can have accountability, I can still not get burnt out. At the same time, I can get things done. It's a balance that I can bring in. Challenging and then empathizing is something that I see that I need to learn. I have to choose my battles and then I need to bring in is what I, share my perspectives here.
Absolutely, absolutely, Archana. Very well said. Like you said, that supporting managers is one of the biggest things that we can do, right? They're just thrown into the sea and asked to swim from day one. And like you said, all of a sudden you became a manager from an individual capacity, and that added a lot to you without having any training and as such. So one thing that I always see that, and we are right now in a GCC. I'm working in a GCC, Aveda as a GCC, and we are having dynamic changes every now and then. There are structural changes, new teams being built up, new managers who are born every now and then. So I always say start with mentoring. Do not give a person the entire responsibility of being called a manager on papers and then having to deliver everything at once. Start by letting the person mentor, let him see what his capability is, what his passion is, like you said, right? Whether he is actually passionate to lead a team or whether he is happy doing his work in an individual capacity. Ask him. He might be confused, so give him the chance to mentor. Let him see where his skill sets are, what he likes, what he doesn't like. Let him then have to choose whether he wants to become a full-fledged manager or does not. That is one. Second, like you said, making managers effectiveness groups. So in my previous company also, we realized that we have this problem, and we came up with a group called as managing the managers. So we also created groups where we connected different groups of managers used to connect. They used to share their best examples and ways through which they are managing people. That actually helped to a large extent. There was Katie done, and we could even it also helped in reducing attrition, because people who were done with one project, they could actually be taken into some other project in a different function. So it actually helped multiple ways. And third is saying no. So as a manager, I always tell my team that if there is anything that comes to you after the post hours, which is generally after 8, I do not, that is still late, but still okay. So I say, if nothing is burning, no one is dying, and we are not losing money as a company, these three things, if none of these things are happening, then it can wait till sunrise. So wait, right? Push back. Say, this is the first thing I will do on priority when I get up tomorrow, when I start my day tomorrow. This is something we all need to learn, I believe. As Indians, as South Asians, I think we have been into that culture. It has become a part of our system where we just take on everything and say yes. So I think that's something that we have to start doing. So these are the three things that I still do. I have started doing it. I tell my team members, don't even take my phone if I'm calling you on a weekday or a weekend or on a weekday after 8 o'clock. If I call, know that something is actually burning. Otherwise, I would not. So probably we need to get into that mindset to get over this, and to probably bring in a culture which starts taking care of the managers. Even the managers are not even paid OT. Think about it. Our policies are made in a way where compensatory off is available for the team members, overtime is available for the team members, but the policies are designed in a way where it is only till the team leads. Beyond managers and all, it is assumed that it's a part of their job, right? So we need to break out of that. And we need to be empathetic. They're as much employees as other team members are, right?
True, true. So one thing I have learned in HR is that burnout really happens overnight. So or even in for example in any other department, because there's a term called in corporate that they have led is everything is urgent, everything is on fire. So there's a false sense of urgency to everything. So most people imagine that burnout is like a sudden breakdown, but it actually quietly builds over time. Like it starts with very small things, an extra project, a very difficult stakeholder or a difficult leader, a few late evenings, then get pushed into more late evenings, then a weekend of work here and there. So individually, none of these seem like a big issue. But when managers carry all of them for months, they eventually move from performing to just simply surviving and meeting the goals. Because that is what my current situation I am at. Because I feel that I just received a Falcon Award back a few days, but when I received it, all my mind was opened with the with the task that I have to complete. I was like, okay, this is the to-do list that I have to do, because this, and I could not just, for a 1 or 2 minutes also just feel the happiness of receiving that award, because I just received that, I need to complete this, because now I feel like if I've been awarded, now I have to be more careful about everything that, surrounds me. So but when, as I said, this is not a one simple sign. So for me, the biggest warning sign isn't when someone says they're tired. It's when a manager who was or any person who was once very energetic, very proactive, or very full of ideas, they just suddenly became quiet. So which are the signs also which I'm observing in myself during a meeting, because I was always the one to raise my hand or to just have a new idea. But right now I feel that if I do this, it will add up to my task, and I already have 100 things pending. It will be 101 thing. So I feel that that's usually the point where the damage has already started. So organizations, they need to stop waiting for burnout to become visible. We need to, even in our own teams, we need to identify the signs a bit earlier, and not when the person has finally broken down, or they finally had to put a resignation, or just they can't do it anymore. So I think it is very important to watch for the early signs, like like somebody who's constantly working for longer hours, or somebody who's not able, who was once very proactive but now has just gone dull. So just as we track business performance, we should also track leadership well-being. So it is very important to identify those signs in the early place, because once a very good performer can actually turn into someone who's just not there. They just have that in their mind. I just have to do this and I just have to log out. So that usually kills the creativity in people and the passion as well to do things.
Vanika, just adding to that,
Hmm.
uh, 40% of the managers, they start looking out for a change every 2 years. And it
That's
is
true.
not because they want more money. It is just because they feel that if they move to a different organization, probably the work pressure will be less,
That is why everybody is looking for a work life balance, which is nowhere.
which is
So I
nowhere.
always I always tell people it's a myth. Somebody asks me, how do you manage? I'm writing emails at 2 a.m. I don't think I'm the right person to say that. So even my manager, she calls me and says, you need to learn, say no. You need to identify and prioritize things. Then if somebody is coming to me with a false sense of urgency, I cannot understand. Somebody from leadership is coming. So I think that needs to be something that needs to be spoken in the upper management as well. That not everything is urgent, because we create a vicious cycle for the people who are coming in, for the freshers, because that is how they see us and that is how we treat them. So that is also something which needs to be talked about. That's true. Yes.
Absolutely,
But
absolutely.
I'll add on to the points, right? We are talking about burnout, but there are organizations who are trying to curb it. First, to start with, is a strong succession planning you need to do so that you understand whether the person is ready to become a manager and what is the aspiration. That's why it's a robust succession planning system needs to be there, and that's where the talent management team plays a key role in understanding the aspiration of the individuals. Second, coming from a fact that here in Honeywell, we have a new manager training program, we call it Uplift, where we have everything like understanding yourself, working on yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses. Then you understand the business dynamics. Even there are topics like Eisenhower metrics on how to figure out what is urgent and what is important. And you also work towards understanding the framework of whether a person is how do you start directing, whether it is the ability, you look at the ability and motivation matrix, and then you decide which one has to be prioritized, which one has to be no, and which person has to be delegated. All said and done, these are all concepts that organizations are teaching, but these concepts, we already know with the Kirkpatrick model that the retention is very low, and then after the program is over, managers go back and then all of these gets wiped out. So it's important that if these has to be re-emphasized again and again, and that can only be done if we have a strong mentorship program. And I was recently joking with a manager of mine saying that there are very few HRs with respect to the number of managers we have in the organization. So it's at times important that HRs, I know how loaded we are as well, but then ultimately our role is also to coach managers and help them out. So we have to have that bandwidth as well. From manager burnout, I'm coming to HR burnout, but we also need to have that bandwidth so that we can help coach these managers, work with them day on day, and help them, because we right now are very thorough with the concepts that we are, but to re-emphasize it somewhere, we need to be involved, and the plus ones managers plus one, their leaders needs to be involved with the mentorship, and constant support system has to be created. That support system somewhere we are taking away from the managers. So even though we have a lot of process, a lot of things are getting done, but how impactful, how effective it is something that we need to question ourselves.
So I think at this point of time, we have successfully, opened up a very honest and candid conversation, I must say, around a topic that isn't discussed often enough. And then what everyone said, that, theme that has come up repeatedly today is that managers are being asked to do more communication, more coaching, more mentorship, be good at individual decision making, as well as group setup, stakeholder management. So that brings us to a really interesting section at a time when AI is helping us, automate some of these tasks, repetitive tasks, being more productive, like summarizing information. Should managers actually be feeling less pressurized than before, or has AI simply changed the nature of the pressure? What's your take on that?
Bhavna, AI, the managers are actually adopting AI at twice the rate their team members do. they are at much more pressure to adopt AI and show their efficiency, that hey, I have included AI in my work, in my day-to-day activities, and this is how the team has become more efficient. This is how I am saving, this much is what I'm saving in terms of revenue or cost, and this is the extra revenue that I'm earning as a manager. This has actually added more pressure to in the day to day life of managers. AI can do a lot of things. AI can summarize meetings, they can automate reports, but it cannot build the trust that the team members would actually have with the managers, unless the manager spends time, quality time, talking to their team members, right? That AI cannot do. AI cannot resolve conflicts. AI cannot coach the team members, the performances. It cannot make decisions for you. It can help you, but it cannot make ethical decisions for you. It cannot create the psychological safety. We were talking about that, right? So AI can write the performance feedback, but it cannot help the manager have a or navigate through a difficult performance conversation. It can always reduce the administrative task, but it cannot create leadership for that matter. And these days, the managers are so much pressurized, I feel, because everywhere there is just talk of AI, AI, AI. This company is laying off people because of AI. This company is adopting AI. I think the pressure on the managers to adopt AI and show the effectiveness of AI is much more than actually how AI helps them.
I also think that the answer is both, that it is, somewhere reducing the burnout, but it is also increasing expectations. That's true. Because AI is, definitely helping the manager save time. It's more like the administrative work that it is taking care of. So that's a huge advantage. But it is also that, the reality is that manager don't lose sleep over preparing reports. They lose sleep over difficult conversations with the employees, resolving the team conflicts or resignations, handling the stakeholder pressure. And but AI can certainly give us the solution, but it cannot replace judgment or empathy, trust, or leadership. So the real question shouldn't be whether AI, is making the managers more productive. The real question should be whether AI gives managers more time to focus on people, because that's where leadership actually happens. Because work can be managed, right? The administrative task it can take care of, but the real life incidences, or where emotions are involved, that is where AI should be more handy to managers. So I think the answer is both. It is helping out in work, but it is not taking out the burnout completely away from managers.
I have a different opinion. Right now, we would say that the implementation of AI is the one that is eating a lot of bandwidth of our managers, right? Implement it, understand it, then train your team to implement it. And business wants productivity as soon as you implement AI. So your productivity should fast track, the quality needs to improve. But I don't see it detrimental. I'm just seeing it as a challenge right now, but I'm seeing it as a fruitful help that will going to come in the future. Now, when we are talking about coaching, people management, effectiveness, uh, one thing we forget that managers need to document well, and that's a gap which every managers have. And once you start training your chatbots also on your people, ultimately you're just not writing your annual appraisal, you are understanding the individual who are dealing with. So today, I mean, you go to chat GPT and talk about I am not gelling with XYZ as a person, these are the observations that I have, these are the impacts that I have seen in the actions. You feed in the timelines, you feed in the information. It gives you a robust understanding of an individual, which used to take a lot of time before. We used to stay confused on how is this person behaving? Am I understanding the value of the person or not? Should I tell him yes or not? At least AI can give you options, one, two, three, four, five. This is how you should interact with that person. This is where the person might feel offended, and use those data with your own understanding of that individual and then work with it. Even AI can give you how to draft well a feedback and give you a structure, so that when you are in that conversation with that individual giving him a strong feedback, at least the structure is there before you, the language is there before you, how you communicate is there. So in the long run, AI is going to be very beneficial for the manager, and managers need to be coached on how effectively they can use it, rather than just using it for just writing, copy pasting something and doing it. It can be much more detailed.
But I believe that the term people manager, somewhere if we are putting it in chat GPT and asking, if this is if this something happens and, we have to reach out to the employee or what basically how we should solve this issue. So I think sometimes it gives us a responses which also clouds our judgment, which also creates like a preconceived notion for a situation. So I
And
believe
that's
that,
where emotional maturity of the manager
correct,
is also important, right? We
correct,
know that
true,
ChatGPT is just a tool. It should not
true,
take over our life or should not be the one
correct.
directing our life. So that's where I think people maturity and the human side should come up.
Agreed, agreed. But I just feel that somehow or somewhere we are implementing AI or we are just talking about it so much that the real touch or the real connection somehow feels lost because everything is available on the Chat GPT, Claude. There are several platforms for everything. But I feel that some situations, for coming from the HR perspective, some situations or some things, still require a human touch. For example, if an employee comes up to me, shares their personal problems, and I sit and listen rather than just just simply. And I completely agree that it requires that emotional maturity. That's agreed, and that's very true. But if I feel that if they're talking to me and I'm just writing on Chat GPT, okay, they're facing family issues and what should I respond? So I feel that somewhere or the other, certain situations still or in the future would also be more people oriented than to more AI oriented. So AI is definitely helping. It helped me, create a document which could have easily taken me 3 hours. It helped me do it in 30 minutes. So that was great. So, but I feel somewhere or the other, coming from HR side, some things still require some human touch.
I think it's interesting to hear that, while AI may help reduce some of the administrative burden and it does not necessarily remove the human side of leadership. And as we approach the end of the session, and thanks for the reminder, Ishita, thanks for the gentle reminder. So I think so far we have, diagnosed the problem really well. Let's see if we can prescribe a few solutions to the participants, to the audience, and to everyone who's listening to us today. And on that note, I would like to do a quick rapid fire round with all of you. So, one question, one answer, and no 5 pointers. So, my question today is, what is one thing organization must stop doing if they really want healthier managers?
I would go stop expecting accountability without giving enough authority.
I'll go next.
Great. That's,
So
yeah.
we have a beautiful background. Thank you so much, Archana, for designing this background. And the answer is very simple. Writing in the left side down corner of this background, strong managers need strongest support.
Short and powerful, I must say.
I would say organizations should or must stop treating managers as shock absorbers or infinite resources. They should build capability and not just capacity.
And I think many managers would agree to what you just said.
So I would like to add key organization they should stop rewarding burnout and calling it a dedication. They should actually identify the signs and help people come out of it sooner.
I see all the nodding heads.
My point would be to stop making managers accountable for all the problems in the
True.
Really great. Brilliant. So, all right, everyone, I think those were some of the really powerful insights. And as we come to the end of our discussion, I would like to leave the audience with one final thought from each one of you, which you just said. And thank you to all of you for sharing your perspective, experiences, and being so candid and honest today. And I hope today's discussion has given us all something to reflect on how we support the people who support our teams on an everyday basis. And with that, I'll hand it back to Veerbhadra.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bhavna, and thank you to all our panelists and Bhavna for moderating the session. Thanks for sharing your insights, and we look forward to coming back again for some more insightful discussions in the coming months. So, thank you very much. Thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule and doing this for us. So, thank you very much. So, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. It was great meeting you
Thank
all.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.